Hello friends of Golf Course Quality Fertilizer. Today we're going to talk about how to seed areas in our lawn. This used to be a pine tree that died, and a lot of pine trees are dying lately because of a disease. And this was a blue spruce. And so we came in, we added some soil after we had that stump ground out. I'm now spreading it out right now to get ready to do seed. It's good to add soil, especially under a blue spruce, which is a little acidic, and so it might be a little tougher to grow grass in that kind of an area. So I'm using a landscape rake. These are really great. Not everybody has one of these, but I use it a lot more often than I think I would. But it's great for smoothing things out and getting your ground prepped. You can make it a lot smoother with this guy. It's easier to bust up these clumps with it, you know, as you're going around. And I don't get too concerned about clumps around the edges. I'll kind of bust them up some, but eventually the rain and things like that's going to bust them up and work them in. And so I don't get real particular. I just want to make it so I can seed it and get that seed in there. I also, when I do fill in an area, I'll make sure that I have plenty. So like actually the hole wasn't till about right in here, and it was about 3 or 4 inches deep. And so I fill it in and I kind of make it a little bit high because this is going to settle in a little bit too, and I don't want to have a depressed area. Once the grass is in there, it's a whole lot harder to get the soil to raise back up in there. So I just take this and I raise it up a couple inches, and then put a little, maybe 1 or 2 more extra inches in there and floated it into the existing grass. And once I get it all smoothed out, then we're ready to go. And so I'll show you next how to seed this area. Okay, now we're going to implement. We got it prepped, we got it smoothed out where we want it, up a little bit because it's going to settle some, especially if it's more than a couple inches of soil. So it's a little crowned on it, and I'm going to put seed on it. I'm using turf type tall fescue. I love turf type tall fescue. You're going to hear me talk about it all the time. It just germinates faster than Kentucky bluegrass. Kentucky bluegrass takes 21 to 28 days. This takes 3 to 7. And this looks a lot like bluegrass. It does good in shade, poor soil conditions, and so I really enjoy this. There are some downfalls to this. It doesn't fill in as good as bluegrass will if there's been some damage, and it gets a little bit of snow mold compared to the others, but everything else, it's really disease tolerant during the summer. It's drought tolerant, shade tolerant, so it's a really good grass, and so I prefer that over bluegrass. And so this one here is a bigger seed, so you're going to want to go down pretty heavy with it, and so I'm going to show you about how heavy. It's going to be like snow, and normally you can use like a hand spreader, or you can use you know, your own spreader if it's a larger area. In this situation I'm just going to use my hand, and it doesn't have to be perfectly even, but you want to, you know, try to make it look all about the same. I put it down so thick that it kind of looks like snow. We're getting close to it right here now. Yeah, getting a little closer to where we want, because we're going to rake it in a couple different directions, and so it will end up becoming a lot more even when we rake it through in a couple different directions. So even if we're a little heavy in one spot, it'll work out in the end. We're going to make it pretty even, and don't worry about your edges too much, because you're going to rake your seed and it's going to work its way to the edges, at least in this situation. If I'm up next to a landscape bed or something, I might take and just do by hand right along the edge there. That way I don't get it in my landscape beds and have grass growing in my beds, which is, you know, not necessarily fun to deal with, because then you got to figure out how to kill it without killing your good plants, and so we'll try not to do that. This little container covers 300 square feet, and this is a little bit smaller than 300 square feet, not much, but I'm probably going to end up using the whole container in this situation, because I like to seed heavy with this this turf type tall fescue, because it doesn't spread. So I'll seed it pretty heavy. Alright, getting pretty close to where we want to be. That should be about good. There we go, 300 square feet worth. Alright. Now I'm going to show you another rake too here that I really like, and it's called a spring rake. It's different than other rakes. It's got this little loop and it's got tempered wires on it, so it's just a little wire. What I like about this is it can really work the soil up without tearing up grass that you do have. If you're seeding into an area that has grass already, it's just thinned out grass. and it doesn't pull the seed so much as well. And so when you're raking it in, the important part about that is going in multiple directions. So it's not really hard to do. You just want to drag across it in one direction, just holding the rake down. You're going to do it in several directions. And then I'll show you, we'll take a pause here and I'll show you what to do after this, after I get it all raked in. All right, so I've just about done raking it in. I've raked it in 3 directions. Minimally 2 directions is what you want to rake it in. The more you do it, the better. I mean, the smoother it becomes. You know, the better you can work your little edges to feather those out and get that done. And so you want to mix it in real good. So I raked it in 3 directions on this guy. And now you're going to go to the next step after you've got it raked in, and that's tracking it in. So tracking it in is actually stepping on it and getting it put in. Now we're going to cheat a little bit and use my lawnmower. As long as it's not a concrete compressor thing, you know, lawnmower tires, feet tracks, where it just presses that soil in. You can see where I'm kind of packing it in here a little bit. Let me show you two of me using the lawnmower. If I can get this stuff out of the way real quick. Okay, so we got it all tracked in, ran back and forth on it till the whole thing is been tracked down. That's a huge benefit. It really helps. It doesn't compact it so hard that it's going to keep the roots from being able to establish, but it helps it hold moisture, and it makes sure that the seed knows that it has seed to soil contact, which is really nice. And then this is another step that I've actually came up with just last season to ease our lives and cheapen things. Now, you'll need this type of rake, or at least a metal leaf rake in order to do this. And it's where you kind of dig through and get some of this thatch out of your lawn, your healthy part of your lawn. And what you're going to do is you're going to use this instead of like straw or some other stuff. You're going to use this to cover the area and help hold moisture. And also, what's nice about using your thatch that you dig up from the turf is that when it decays and breaks down, it becomes exactly the fertilizer that this new seedlings require. So it's a real inexpensive, cheap way to get this thing so it holds moisture longer. And this is an important step too. Just leaving it bare soil, it's going to dry out real quick. And in order to get seed to germinate, it has to stay wet all the time. And so we want to do anything we can, like tracking it, like covering it with these grass clippings here. And I'll show you about how thick I like to have it. At least have a good layer everywhere. So let's kind of look at this area here up close. And so something like this, where it's not burying it, but yet it's got a good cover over everything here. And that's what you're looking for in order to have a finished product. Now you can throw starter fertilizer down when you're done. In this situation, we're in the middle of September, which is an ideal time to seed anyways, really ideal, because it has the longest time to germinate and grow up and become mature before next summer hits. And that's what cool season doesn't like, is that hot summer. And so we want it to have as much time to be as strong as it can to defeat that summer heat and survive it.